شقي للعليل الباكي وترفقي بفتى المنى مرضاك ما نام وشدا تجاسرت عيناه بين المروج تغازلت عيناك الله وجد دائم وصبابة وتسهل وتوسب لخطاك أتخادعيه وتخلفي ميعاده وتعذبين مدللا بهواك وهو الذي بات الليالي باكيا يرعى النجوم لعله وهو الذي بات الليالي باكيا يرعى النجوم لعله يلقاك يرعى النجوم لعله يلقاك يرعى النجوم لعله يلقاك
والله لا يشبع الجبسية كرة
بين الخمائل والعيون بواكي بين المروج على الغدير تعلقت عيني بعينك والفؤاد طواك.
The sort of politicians' response to the result, you know, so many MPs do think that if this was a public vote, we've said we're going to follow what the result was. A lot of people think they do need to follow it until we have, say, another public vote, which comes up with a different answer. So whether or not that's a general election where a sort of coalition of Remain supporting parties win, in which case you could say the majority of the country is now in favour of remaining in the EU, or whether it is having another referendum where, again, the result is different. I think until we have that point, it's quite difficult to say that we can no longer respect the referendum result. I don't know if Nick has a different perspective on that.
Well, I mean, if you think of what happened in the 2017 general election, well, what happened then, of course, was that Theresa May was putting very much the hard line about the British exit, the British departure from the EU, and of course the public didn't quite agree, did they? She didn't get the overwhelming mandate that she wanted, so there's already been one check to the referendum, but you're quite right. I mean, what is the shelf life for it? And I think this is one of the main sort of weapons which the Remain side are arguing, that the longer this goes on, the shelf life of the referendum result gets whiskerier and whiskerier. And if you look at the opinion polls, it's quite interesting. I mean, you might not read them in all of the papers, but they are seeming to indicate, I mean, Maddie might have a different interpretation, but that, you know, the majority now is 52% perhaps to remain and 48% to leave. So it's a reverse. And if you work in other factors, like the change of opinion among young people, the fact that more might vote in a referendum, we could quite well see another result. And I think this, if we sort of look behind the political fighting, why do the Leave side make so much fuss about defending and depending on the 2016 result, is that because they're probably very fearful that if it did go to another referendum, there might be a different result.
And the fact it's non-binding, is that not a factor, Nick?
Yes, of course it's been non-binding, and that's one of the arguments. I mean, one of the great criticisms, Niall, of David Cameron was that he didn't put any, he didn't put a time limit on it. He didn't say if it's got to be, for example, some people might have said, well, look, unless you can get 60% to vote in favour of leaving, then it doesn't qualify. So there should have been some limit. Those were the sorts of things that many people have argued since were the failings of David Cameron, that he didn't actually quantify how this referendum should be conducted, and it was in this very loose way of just one vote. It could swing it for the whole of 50 million people in this country.
Well, on the other hand, it's given us plenty to talk
It
about.
has, it's kept us in business.
345 60973. Still time to get your question to Maddie or Nick. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC Now or News. Here's Lisa.
The House of Lords has approved a bill designed to stop the government forcing through a no-deal Brexit, as opposition parties say they will not vote for a general election when Boris Johnson asked them to do so again on Monday. Judges at the High Court in London have rejected the latest legal challenge over the Prime Minister's decision to suspend Parliament for 5 weeks. The Chief Constable of West Yorkshire has criticised Mr Johnson's visit to the region yesterday, saying he's disappointed his officers were used as a backdrop to what ended up being a political speech about Brexit and the opposition. LBC weather, rain across southern England, moving off to leave a largely dry night for most, a low of 9 degrees.
LBC travel, I'm Dave Goff. There are queues on the M25 clockwise. There's a lane blocked because of an accident between junction 1A for Swanscombe and junction 2 for the A2. It's also very slow on the M25 clockwise from the Homestead Tunnel to junction 26 for Waltham Abbey after a car broke down earlier on, but all the lanes are open now. In the centre of town, the Strand underpass stays closed northbound because the car's broken down, so there are queues over Waterloo Bridge. In East Finchley, the high road stays blocked between Leicester Road and East End Road because of an accident, so there are delays on the approaches. And there are also queues to the Blackwall Tunnel southbound on the A12 from Crawley by Bow. A bus has broken down, so the lane is blocked.
This is LBC. Confucius once said, life is simple, but we insist on making it complicated. We're no philosophers, but at Saint, we believe choosing your next car should be simple too. So we're offering the Ibiza FR for £199 a month, including 17-inch alloy wheels, full LED headlights, and your choice of colour at no extra cost. Why make life more complicated? Because then, us. Saint.
£597 initial rental price based on FR 1 litre MPI 48-month contract hire, 18th plus subject to status, not in conjunction with any other offers. Damage charges may apply. No ownership. Say out financial services.
Call and email 0345 6060 973 LBC. There's nothing like meeting face to face, and there's nothing like Zoom to make that happen. Zoom lets you connect and do business across town or around the world. Zoom ties together all of your communication needs into one easy platform for video conferencing, phone calls, group chat, webinars, and your conference rooms. Connect easily from anywhere, your mobile phone, your laptop, or conference room. Zoom is how business gets done. Get your free account at zoom.com today. Meet happy with Zoom.
I want Poppy to play cricket for England.
I want Sam to stop screaming.
I want Joe to live a little.
I want Naomi to live a lot.
I want Becky to invent a cure for the common cold.
Whatever the future holds for your children, Vitality Life Insurance want to make it happy, healthy and secure. So when you take out our Wellness Optimizer, you'll get up to 40% off your life insurance premiums. I want the twins to keep on being happy.
I just want whatever the twins are on.
Just search Vitality Life Insurance. Additional product, minimum monthly premiums and conditions apply.
The real reason I'm sleeping beautifully asleep was because it was taking so long for the palace to sell. And the handsome prince needed the proceeds to buy their new home with no time to dwell.
I know who can help. Property Rescue. I'll contact them straight away.
So he spoke to their friendly team who took care of every detail. They bought the palace direct with no legal fees to pay. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. way to drive, if you ask me. Eddie Mayer on LBC.
Driving you home with Confused.com, the clear way to compare car insurance.
After 5 o'clock, we'll update you with all today's developments on Brexit. We'll reflect on the death of Robert Mugabe. We'll have the business news as always. Theo will have Theo's thoughts too before 6 o'clock. Right now, Maddie, Team and Jack from the Institute for Government is with us, along with Nick Jones, political journalist. Here's a very straightforward question on text from Darren. Can the UK veto the extension request?
So the legislation requires the Prime Minister to agree the extension with the EU. So although you need agreement of all the EU member states, the legislation tries to ensure that the Prime Minister actually does have to agree whatever extension he asks with the EU. So I don't think he'd be able to do that.
Another question, why can't they have a referendum and general election on the same day? Then people can vote for the manifesto they believe in without it being seen to be about the EU departure. I suppose there's nothing to stop that, is there?
There's nothing to stop it, no. It's a wonderful idea, but it needs the agreement of the political parties.
Oh, I'm sure they would agree that. No?
Well, I don't think they would. That's the whole point, because the question of whether or not, as we just heard in a question you had earlier on from Niall, I mean, the whole question of whether or not the referendum that we had in 2016 should still be the yardstick by which we live today. So I don't think there's going to be another referendum without the approval of Parliament, and I think you've got to have the election first. So in that case, that's the chicken coming before the egg.
Don't say chlorinated. Don't say chlorinated chicken. Several questions about the Queen. One from Paul: can the Queen reject the new law on no deal? And the similar one from Jenny in Fulham. Ask whether the Queen could refuse royal assent if Boris Johnson says he can't recommend it. Can the court overrule the Queen? Goodness.
I mean, it's really, I think it's very difficult to say to the Queen that you shouldn't give royal assent to this bill, given that it's been passed by a majority in Parliament. So I think firstly, I don't think Boris Johnson will try it. But it's also, what's sort of quite interesting is ahead of the prorogation, or ahead of the suspension of Parliament, there's a ceremony. It's called the prorogation ceremony. And any bill that has passed both houses of Parliament and they sort of agreed on it, that's ready for royal assent, does receive royal assent automatically in that ceremony. So even if royal assent hasn't been given, for example, on Monday, we would expect it to achieve royal assent in that ceremony. So I think it will be becoming law.
All right, David is next in Accrington. Hi, David. What's your question for Maddie and Nick?
Yeah, I just wondered that obviously everything goes through like it's expected to, and then in a few weeks Parliament instructs the Prime Minister to go and ask for an extension. What happens if the Prime Minister says, no, I've made a promise to the people we're going to leave on the 31st, I'm not going to ask this question?
Well, you've got a choice. He either goes along with what the law is, and that will be the law if everything goes through and it gets the royal assent, as Maddie has just been saying. Once the Queen has put her signature to it, it's the law of the land. So Boris Johnson, as Prime Minister, has either got to conform to the law, which means he must get, by October the 19th, he must ask for an extension up through and to January the 31st. If he doesn't do that, he's got no alternative other than to resign. And as he's made pretty clear, I don't think he's in any mood for that. So everything now resolves. I mean, we heard him at the start of Eddie's programme, and he was saying that, look, my next objective now is to get to this summit on October 17th, and I am going to get a deal. So that's where we are at the moment. We've got the Prime Minister promising he will get a deal, and he's hoping that will get him out of jail. But if this bill goes through, David, he's really got no alternative, either to accept it or to resign.
David, thank you. Richard is next. Richard, what's your question, please?
Hi, yeah, what I'd really like to know is if we completely fulfil our obligations under the Good Friday Agreement going forward, does that imply that we will have to provide free movement of people across the Irish border?
I think that what sort of you're referring to is the common travel area, which is something which allows people from both sides of the border sort of to live and work at the other side, essentially. And actually, it is worth saying that the UK and the EU sort of have agreed agreed that the Common Travel Area will continue even under a no deal. So that is something that both sides are very committed to ensuring does continue to happen. So that would continue. Although the question then would be is if people were coming over from the island of Ireland into Great Britain, how do you sort of check whether or not they're able to be in the rest of the UK? And that's sort of a bit of a question mark. I don't think at this stage the government has made it clear how they would enforce that.
Richard, thank you. James is next in Bromley. Hi, James. What's your question?
Oh, hi there. I'm just thinking through Boris Johnson's options in relation to forcing a general election, and was wondering whether one of those might be to instruct his own party to issue a vote of no confidence in himself, and thereby forcing election that way. Is that an option? And if so, what are the implications and the ramifications of that?
Maddie.
Yeah, so that is definitely one of his options, and you know, James, I've also been thinking about how he could get to an election, and if he wanted to try to do that, he would need just a sort of simple majority in Parliament. So rather than this 2/3 majority that he needs for this early election motion, which was rejected on Wednesday, and we're going to have another vote on Monday, he could, in theory, table a vote of no confidence in himself. And that would obviously sort of set quite a big challenge to Labour to say, are you really willing to stop an early election by voting confidence in Boris Johnson? That's so much harder to do than just to abstain on an early election. But what I would say is that doing that also, firstly, you need the numbers in the first place, and given we know there's a majority against no deal and against an early election, might not be able to get there anyway. The other thing is you would trigger that 14-day period under the Fixed Term Parliaments Act where someone else could try and form an alternative government. So if you really wanted to go down this route and trust you'll get to a general election, you've got to believe that the opposition parties aren't going to rally round and be able to agree someone else to lead a caretaker government. And it also, because of the timing of it, because you've got the 14 days and then you need about 5 weeks before you can hold an election, I think you're pretty much right up against the 31st of October deadline. So you might not get your election before the 31st of October, which is what he wants.
And he would be betting everything on the House if he did that, because, you know, you have to look at it. He would literally be staking everything. He would be staking the risk he would be facing would be that he would actually find that the opposition parties could get their act together, that they could find somebody, and then of course he'd be out of a job. And of course, if it did come to a general election afterwards, what an advertisement to say, here's the man standing for re-election who actually moved a vote of no confidence in himself. So it's a very risky option.
Mark, last quick question to you. Fire away.
Yeah, hi, Eddie.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. Great to hear you on LBC instead of the BBC. I transferred with you. Just quickly, what happens if Boris Johnson orders all his MPs to resign, triggering basically a multiple by-election?
Multiple by-election. That's an option we haven't heard.
No, we haven't heard that one. That would be absolutely fantastic. But you see, the point would be that would be the same almost as his attempt to try and call a general election. What would it achieve? No, I can't see that going anywhere. Perhaps Maddie's got a quick answer to it.
Well, no, I think the problem with that is basically you won't. If only the MPs who support him resign, he hasn't got a way to get to a majority because the majority of MPs in Parliament wouldn't be resigning, and then he'd risk potentially losing some of those seats. But I do quite like the suggestion because I hadn't thought of that, Mark. So that's a good nice one to end on.
Multiple by-election. Wonderful, Mark, and you clearly talk sense because you're now listening to the right radio station. Mark, thank you so much. Also to you, Nick Jones, and to Maddie Team and Jack from the Institute for Government. So many people wanted to ask questions we couldn't get to, which I think indicates we need to do this again, perhaps quite often, because people have lots of great questions about what's going on with our future, and we need to get them answered. Thanks so much. If you took the time and trouble, we will do this again. News in a moment, right after the Steve Allen soundbite of the night.
Although my brother, strangely enough, was far more liberal with his girls and would rather that they spent the night under his roof in the same bedroom than sit in a local bus shelter or something. I mean, who sits in a bus shelter? Me.
It's 5 o'clock. This is LBC. I'm Eddie Mayer. Here are the headlines. The Lords vote to stop a no-deal Brexit. The Prime Minister can't call the election he says he doesn't want.
No, I said to them, OK, you want to have these endless, pointless delays. I don't think the people of this country want it. Let's try an election. They said no to that, which is curious.
Opposition parties unite to stop a pre-Brexit election.
We're going to have an act of Parliament that is going to compel the Prime Minister to seek an extension.
Also tonight, the death of Robert Mugabe.
Any good that Robert Mugabe did do for Zimbabwe has totally gone down the drain, eradicated by all the atrocities that were committed.
And Jacob Rees-Mogg apologises for this.
It seems to me that Dr. David Nichol is as irresponsible as Dr. Wakefield.
And before 6 o'clock, Theo's thoughts.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 5 o'clock, as peers approve a bill designed to stop the government forcing through a no-deal Brexit, opposition parties say they will not vote for a general election when Boris Johnson asked them to do so again on Monday. Party leaders made their decision in a conference call earlier, saying they refused to let the Prime Minister cut and run with his plans for a snap poll next month ahead of a key EU summit and the departure deadline. They say it should happen in November instead, after he's secured an extension from Brussels. Liberal Democrat MP Chuka Umunna has told LBC going to the country must wait.
We should not do anything in terms of precipitating an earlier general election, which would compromise our ability to stop a no-deal Brexit. We're absolutely up for a general election, but only when we can be absolutely sure that we're not going to fall off a cliff.
The bill will now go forward for royal assent, but Mr Johnson, who's been on a visit to Scotland today, says a vote's needed to break the deadlock.
I said to them, okay, you want to have these endless, pointless delays. I don't think the people of this country want that. Let's try an election. They said no to that, which is curious.
While the campaigner Gina Miller says she's very disappointed after judges at the High Court dismissed her legal challenge against the Prime Minister's decision to suspend Parliament for 5 weeks. The businesswoman says she will continue her fight for democracy by taking the case to the Supreme Court because she's trying to support elected representatives.
MPs have made it plain that they want to be there, they want to scrutinise what happens, and it is their legal right, we believe, for them to be there. They are our eyes and ears at this most crucial time in our history.
Authorities in the Bahamas have warned the final death toll following Hurricane Dorian could be significantly higher than it is now. 30 people are known to have died after the islands were pounded with 185-mile-an-hour winds and heavy rain. The storm's now moving up the east coast of the US, causing more threat to life and power outages. Eversmart Energy has become the 6th supplier to collapse this year. The company supplied 29,000 homes across the country, but had been struggling in recent months, almost losing its license earlier this year over non-payments of renewable taxes. And more details have been revealed about the Duke and Duchess of Sussex's tour of southern Africa later this month. It'll include Prince Harry visiting Angola to see the legacy of the work his mother Diana did, to raise awareness about the threat of landmines. The LBC Markets report a short time ago, the FTSE 100 was down 6 points at 72.65, the pound buying $1.23 and a euro 11. LBC weather: rain across southern England, moving off quite quickly to leave a largely dry night ahead for most. The odd shower elsewhere, turning chilly as well with a low of 9 tomorrow. A cold start again, followed by a mainly dry day with light winds and sunny spells over the UK. A high of 19 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Lisa Aziz.
This is LBC. From Global, leading Britain's conversation with Eddie Mair.
Much more to come. We'll update you on the hurricane in the Bahamas. We'll talk more about why Boris Johnson made a big speech around this time yesterday, standing in front of so many police officers. We've got the latest business news at 5:30 with Justin Urquhart-Stewart. We'll talk about Robert Mugabe, Jacob Rees-Mogg, and right now, the state of Brexit. The House of Lords has passed a bill designed to block a no-deal exit on the 31st of October after MPs passed legislation on Wednesday. Here's what happened in the Lords this afternoon.
Just to remind the House,